Oaks Road. It's for the erection of 2 3-storey dwellings, access from Sanderstead Road, with associated landscaping within a bike stores. So this is the site. It's located on the north side of Purley Oaks Road here, adjoins Sanderstead Road to the top. It's on quite a steep slope upwards from Purley Oaks to Sanderstead. There's a public footpath alongside the site here that joins the two roads. It has a PTAR rating of 2 and is 800 metres walking distance to Sanderstead Station. The house at the bottom here has got planning permission for extensions and conversion into 2 dwellings. So some photos of the site. This one is taken from, just look at the photos. This one's taken from the top of the site at Sanderstead Road, so looking down the site, that's the existing dwelling at the bottom of the site on Purley Oaks Road. This one's taken in the opposite direction, so standing at the back of the house here, looking up to Sanderstead Road at the top. This is a view of the site taken from Sanderstead Road, so this is the site in here behind the fence, that's the neighbouring dwelling at number 240 Sanderstead Road. And 2 pictures of the host property at 145 Purley Oaks Road, and then that's the pedestrian footpath that runs alongside. So the proposal is for the erection of a pair of semi-detached dwellings at the top here, which would front Sanderstead Road. They're both 4-bed homes, and they would continue the existing row of housing along Sanderstead Road along here. So there's a section here that shows the slope of the land. So the houses would have street-facing frontage here, but technically it's development in the grounds of an existing property, so that policy has to be considered. So it's not traditional backland development, but it is in the grounds of a existing dwelling. So policy DM 10.4E says that a minimum length of 10 metres and no less than half or 200 square metres of garden space must be retained for the host dwelling after the subdivision. So in this case, the garden would retain 290 square metres and a length of 18 metres, which would comply with the guidance, complies with the policy. Once the host property has permission for extensions and subdivision, once those extensions are added, the garden would still be 245 square metres and have a length of 15 metres, so it would still comply with the policy. So the section shows that the site is at a much higher land level. So the house at the top here, this is the proposed dwelling, it would be visible from Purley Oaks Road at the bottom, in the same way that you can see the other houses along Sanderstead Road at the top here. So that's taken on Purley Oaks Road. So referencing the addendum now, there was some additional, we had to fact check some of the tree figures that we had, so we can confirm now that the proposal can be constructed without having a detrimental impact on third-party trees. So our tree officer went to the site to check the diameter of this lime tree here in the neighbouring garden of number 147 Purley Oaks Road, and the RPA shown on this plan, so the red line around here, is now accurate, and we have a clear view of what the impacts on that tree will be, which so amendments have been made to the plans to make sure we fully respect the RPA. So the steps that were alongside the dwelling on the outside have been cut off here. They've been reduced in length so they don't enter the RPA, and then the patio has been reduced in size so it also doesn't enter the RPA. No changes to the footprint or the house design are proposed. So there are some very minor encroachments into the corner of the RPA, which you can see here, just very, very minor on the corner of the building. And the ARB method statement outlines that a cantilevered foundation design would be used in this location. The council's tree officer has reviewed the updated plans and he's raised no objection to this. We will, however, want additional details on how the sloping land will be retained during construction, so as not to disturb the tree roots. This is a street scene elevation on the Sanderstead Road, so the houses proposed would have a closer relationship with the neighbouring dwelling on Sanderstead Road than they would with the host dwelling. The ridge height of the proposed dwellings would be 0.9 metres lower than the neighbouring dwelling on Sanderstead Road. There's an 8 metre gap between the two, with the pedestrian path down the middle there. This is the front elevation, so the houses are of a traditional form with a pitch roof, gable ends on both sides, a single projecting front gable here, and then features it's got an asymmetrical pitch roof, the seamless eaves and the small dormers on the back. The proposed materials are a red brick base with terracotta hanging tile above and terracotta roof tiles. So that's the rear elevation, so it's 3 stories at the rear because of the slope of the land, so this is the lower ground level, the ground floor and then first floor, and yeah, you can see the asymmetrical roof pitch there, and the dormers are at the back here, small dormers. Just the floor plans, so you enter from the front at ground floor level. The main living accommodation is at lower ground floor, leading out to the gardens, and then there are bedrooms and bathrooms at ground and first floor here. This is the landscaping plan, so there are no trees being removed as part of the proposal. There are approximately 30 new trees proposed and a new planter along the front here to improve the street scene along Sanderstead Road. There is no step-free access to the dwellings because of the slope of the land. It wasn't possible, so various options for access were considered, but they would have it would have resulted in more land level alterations on both sides, and it wouldn't have been suitable from a street scene perspective. The London Plan policy on accessibility does allow some exceptions of step-free access on small-scale infill developments, and this is on a steep slope, so it's not unfortunately possible to get step-free access to the front. There are some small areas at the front here, which are flat for the bin and bike storage here and here. Also, just to note that there is no car parking proposed on the site because the forecourt is fairly narrow, there's no space. Also, Sanderstead Road is a classified road, so the Highways Authority would be unlikely to permit new crossovers here anyway. If residents have cars, they could park on nearby roads, and a parking stress survey has been done that shows that parking stress is low at 13 to 14% nearby. So that's just this is the frontage on Sanderstead Road, so the flattened areas for the bins and the bikes, the small bits, and then the steps down to the dwelling. And just a CGI of the proposal. And the recommendation is to grant planning permission and subject to conditions and the Section 106 agreement for sustainable transport contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do members of the committee have any questions or anything that's not been covered in the officer's report? Councillor Ramsey.
Just quickly, there's no parking on site, and then there's no parking on the road, but are there actually roads nearby where, I assume residents would have cars at this site, so where are the roads?
Yeah, so residents could park on Purley Oaks Road at the bottom and walk along the path up to the top, or they can park on Britain Hill Road, which is across the other side of Sanderstead Road, or on Downsway. Those are the roads that are within 200 metres of the site that were tested within the parking stress survey, and that's the most likely place where they would park, and there is space on those roads if residents do have cars.
Mr. Bedhouse.
Thank you, and apologies because it was probably covered in the addendum, but sometimes when they're published we're still working and trying to make our way here. So you mentioned the RPA, etc., but not in square meterage. So could you clarify that in square meterage, please?
Yeah, so the issue was there was some discrepancy. So the applicant submitted a tree report that showed the stem diameter of the tree. Oh, hang on, I do have a slide. Sorry, I'm just gonna. so the discrepancy was all about this lime tree in the neighbouring garden, number 147 Purley Oaks Road. So the submitted tree report measured an RPA, or measured the stem diameter to be 490 millimetres, and the neighbouring occupier submitted their own tree report which measured the stem diameter to be 730 millimetres, and because of this discrepancy that the RPA was it was unclear. So our tree officer went to the site this week and he measured the RPA using a tape measure, and we're now very clear that the stem diameter of the tree is 640 millimetres, which is in between the two numbers that we had previously, between the two reports, two independent reports, and the RPA is 7.7 metres, which is the red line shown here. And yeah, once we knew that information, some minor amendments were required to the external steps and the patio, but there's no objection from our tree officer on the proposal that we have in front of us.
And so the cantilever approach means there won't be deep foundations which could impact with the root system in close proximity on where you have that boundary in blue, right?
Yeah, the cantilevered approach is to do just with the very corners of, so the single-story part and then just the corner of that building. The method statement explains that cantilevered foundations would kind of lie on top of the slope of the on top of the slope, on top of the tree roots, and our tree officer has subsequently asked for more information about how the land, because it's on such a steep slope, how it will be retained during the construction, and those details can be provided as part of the condition. But the proposal for a cantilevered sections in this bit on top of the RPA, these very small parts on top of the RPA, the tree officer is happy with.
Councillor Fraser.
Chair, just for my own total understanding of the parking situation area, para 739, it notes that there's 185 free parking spaces available on the assumption there's 14% or 13% occupancy of available parking spaces. Is that the correct reading of it? So basically, you're talking about parking stress. It is the level of occupancy of available parking.
Yes, 185 free spaces. That was identified in the transport assessment in the parking stress survey. And yeah, 185 free spaces. So the stress, there were very few cars parked basically when the assessment's done overnight. Only 14% of the spaces were filled, leaving 185.
So that, to my mind, is very low parking stress.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarification for the officer before we move to speakers? No. Thank you. So we have three speakers wishing to address us this evening on this item. Richard Lander, who will be speaking against the application. Rod Davis, attending in person, who will be speaking in support of this application. And Councillor Lynn Hale, the Board Councillor for this application, attending in person. Thank you. So, Richard Lander, could you approach, please?
Hi, this is Richard Lander. Are you receiving me?
Yeah, loud and clear, Mr. Lander, thank you.
Very good.
So, Mr. Lander, obviously we're here to listen to you for 3 minutes. I will give you an indication just as we come up to 2.5 minutes. You've got 30 seconds left. But when you're comfortable, you may start and talk to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to draw the committee's attention to our concerns relating to the proposed plan. We've reviewed the report, item 5.1, and we found the following inconsistencies, concerns and omissions. Firstly, shown in section 6.3 of the report, objections are raised on the grounds of traffic safety and congestion. The report states there are no waiting restrictions on Sanderstead Road. This is contradicted by the presence of a no waiting sign fixed to a nearby lamppost. Access from properly parked vehicles is either from Britton Hill Road, crossing the busy Sanderstead Road, with poor sightlines, or via the stepped, unlit path from Purley Oaks Road. In both cases, access from parked vehicles is inconvenient. Inevitably, this will result in improper stopping on Sanderstead Road, obstructing traffic and resulting in congestion and safety hazards. The area at the top of path 142 on Sanderstead Road, marked off with a solid white line and chevrons, is not a parking bay. But if it looks like a parking bay, it will be used as a parking bay, regardless of the legality of parking there, creating further obstruction to the road and the path. We also want to draw attention to the clearing of the mature trees in the garden of 145 before making the application. We regard this as an act of bad faith by the developer pressuring the previous owners. We found discrepancies between the two tree survey reports in the measurements of the lime tree. We reported this in the objections. This objection was not mentioned in the report. We then sent the tree survey documents to the committee members and officers for their review. On Tuesday, the Croydon tree officer measured the lime tree and confirmed that the stem measurements in the developer's plan was incorrect. Today, amended plans have been submitted, which still have construction within the RPA. We respect the tree officer's authority on the judgment given in the supplement. However, we still regard the construction of the plan to be a danger to the tree. We believe that these issues are significant and that the application should be refused. In summary, we ask the committee to consider these points further before making a decision on the proposed plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now moving to Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, make yourself comfortable. There's a little switch by the light on when you're ready. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members, officers. Thank you for a very thorough presentation. Okay, I'll keep it brief. I don't think I need the full 3 minutes. So we've worked through various options with officers on this site. I think it's a product of 3 pre-application meetings, in-depth discussions, particularly with highways and particularly with highway safety, are taking place, and we've got the full support of highways officers. We've also got support for the improvement to the pedestrian path that would be delivered by having natural surveillance of new development there. To talk to the trees that were felled prior to the developer, Red Banksia, taking ownership, they were felled by the previous owner. We had no involvement with the site at that time. We took ownership of the site with a pile of trees in the middle of the land. The existing context, so it's a clear site with a good road frontage onto Sanderstead Road, properties to the west, well, there are properties on the west facing Sanderstead Road, and a number of redevelopments on the northern side of Sanderstead Road, of houses being turned into large flatted developments. We've listened to what members have said at committee over the last year or so, and we're responding. So we're not proposing flats here. It could be a site that could be a good candidate for flats, but we're proposing houses here. That, you know, the message has been clear that that's what members want. So the proposal complements the Sanderstead Road properties. It's smaller, it's got a lower ridge, it's not as wide and it's not as deep, so it's kind of subservient in all aspects of the Sanderstead Road properties. But it works really hard to respond better to the Purley Oaks properties, so the separation, window to window distance is greater. We've worked hard to design landscaping which improves the screening between the properties on Sanderstead Road and the Purley Oaks properties. So yeah, a more successful relationship created whilst complementing that Sanderstead Road existing character. We've also taken steps to restore the soft edge. So yes, a number of trees have been felled and proposes 13 replacement trees, many of which up on that Sanderstead Road frontage, so the soft edge will be repaired. And finally, the site works, or the proposal works well with levels to optimise the delivery of housing on this kind of unique site, and yeah, should hopefully improve the character of the area to delivering some high quality architecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Davis. Well under time. We now have local ward councillor, Councillor Hale, to speak. Councillor Hale, you have 3 minutes to present to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I am very concerned about the recommendation to approve this application because I believe that there are some serious issues with the proposal. Whilst family-sized houses are welcome, I do think that there are just too many compromises which are having to be made with this scheme to try and make it work on this site. Firstly, in relation to access, there are 3 main concerns. Firstly, the proposal has no level access for the residents at all. The properties would need to be accessed directly from Sanderstead Road down a steep flight of steps. This is not family friendly in terms of buggies and heavy shopping, and neither is it at all disabled friendly. Secondly, there is no on-site car parking at all for residents, visitors and delivery vehicles, risking dangerous parking on this busy road. Thirdly, since there's no vehicle access onto the site proposed at all, clearly no construction vehicles will be able to get off the road during any development phase. This is acknowledged in the officer's report on page 7, where it says delivery drivers would have to stop temporarily on the road. There are in fact waiting restrictions which apply here, and we really shouldn't be relying on illegal parking arrangements on a narrow stretch of a busy bus route to enable development. Such inappropriate parking would also likely obstruct the well-used public footpath which runs alongside the site and which is used especially by families walking to and from Ridgeway Primary School. The obstruction of this part of Sanderstead Road with its constant stream of traffic and buses by any vehicle will effectively cause one-way traffic only and subsequent congestion for the period that the vehicle is parked there, introduce highway safety issues as vehicles manoeuvre around large parked vehicles, probably with restricted visibility, and also impede sight lines for pedestrians trying to cross Sanderstead Road from the adjacent footpath. But from the tree constraints plan, which indicates the site entrance, this road blocking appears to be the developer's intention. My final point of concern relates to the trees issue, and Mr Lander has covered this point well. Indeed, the applicant himself recognises the significance of constraints in terms of the trees. Drawing AC 2022.5.2 lodged today states that due to extensive RPAs within the proposed footprint of the building and extensive canopy overhead, there shall be restrictions on the type of equipment that will be used. In summary, this application for 2 4-bedroom family-sized homes is just too big for this site and needs too many compromises to make it work. One house could provide level access and also allow for off-street parking, which really is essential here, both for construction and future residents. I ask that the committee refuse the application on grounds of inadequate access arrangements, highway safety and tree protection issues. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Does the officer want to comment on statements heard?
Thank you, Councillor. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of the meeting. I'm Ian Parker, so I'm here as team leader for those on the call. Just a couple of clarifications. So the tree officer has visited the site and measured the tree in question as clarified. The report provided by the neighbour was addressed in paragraph 7.34 of the report, so it was read previously and it was looked at. It was also mentioned in paragraph 6.3, which summarises the neighbour objections. It wasn't set out in full detail in the report. That's not how we recite the objections in the report, but I can clarify that we had seen that report, we have read it, and we have summarised it in the report. The waiting restriction on Sanderstead Road is a waiting restriction which is only for 5-ton vehicles and for or buses or coaches, so it doesn't apply to all vehicles. It only applies between 6 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. and midnight, and then midnight to 8 a.m. So it only applies overnight. There are no restrictions during the day. We've checked that with our highways officer, who's confirmed that's the case. So vehicles can stop on the roads to unload or load. There will be a construction logistics plan, and for day-to-day use, if they've got a supermarket delivery vehicle or something like that, they are allowed to stop on the road and unload. There isn't any sort of illegal activity being promoted. And then just to clarify the access to Purley Downs Road, so there is a footpath down the site. It has got steps down it. There are street lights out either end. Or if you do want to walk around, there is a footpath. There's a pavement sort of that's continuous all the way around to Purley Downs Road.
Thank you very much. We will now open up the committee for deliberation. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chairman. I've read the report and watched the presentation carefully. Thank you for both of those. That was the case that we heard for the application. And now Councillor Hale made a very powerful case against, as did Mr. Lander. We know that the site's in a P-TEL2 area, which is poor access to public transport, and we know there are no parking spaces provided. It's pedestrian access only. We've heard about safety concerns. They've understandably been expressed. The Sanderstead Road is a fast-moving and hazardous road. The development itself, I revisited the M10 and asked myself, does it contribute anything to the public realm? Does it respect the development pattern that the M10 seeks to do? I think it doesn't. Does it respond positively? Again, I think not. I'm not convinced that the modern or contemporary features are in keeping with the surrounding area. I think it's out of keeping with the local area. There are no other rear garden developments along that stretch of Sanderstead Road. I don't believe that's a stretch of road that's conducive to further development for the safety reasons that we've heard about this evening. I wouldn't have step-free access. In fact, it relies on steps down from the pavement, again as we've heard. And the main living and dining space will be at lower ground floor level, according to the report. 240 Sanderstead Road is just 7 metres away from the site boundary, and there's 4 windows facing the application site, albeit with a narrow footpath in between. I just feel, Chairman, that corners are being cut to squeeze in this development to a site which is at best difficult. I'm hoping there's enough here to refuse the application. I'll be interested to hear what others have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Chair. This is an interesting one. One could very well take the view that the proposals are underutilising the site. We have a housing crisis, and in particular in South Croydon, there is a desperate need for new homes. But what we've heard this evening is that developers have tried to work with officers to become policy compliant, and the question seems to be that that it's not family friendly or wheelchair friendly, that the construction when it's being constructed it could obstruct the road, and that there is a lack of parking. We have heard from officers, and the papers set out the responses, because these are not new objections, they were part of the objections that a limited number of people put in against this site. I have to say, I think those responses from officers effectively state that they have been overcome. There will be a construction logistic plan. There is the right to park occasionally on the road under the Highways Act, and that 2 family homes this is not a backyard there are, and that the separation distance are 15 metres and 18 metres, I think my notes mention. Overall, as I said, I would personally like to have seen maybe 5 or 6 flats on this site. I think that would have been better. But the developer said that he's listened to the words from this committee that family homes are needed. I don't think it's particularly modernist style. It's a red brick. It has all the features of a traditional British house. It uses quite, it doesn't use, as was mentioned before, it's not covered in plastic. It's reflective of the style of house. And actually, if you look at it on Google Maps, that you can see where the elements of the design have been taken from the surrounding properties. So overall, I think it would need a robust construction logistic plan to make this site work while it's being built. I think the overwhelming need for family homes within the area, that these 2 houses could help meet that need. And I think the design is credible and I think stand up to scrutiny, and I think it would be an enhancement to the area. So I'm at this stage minded to support.
Councillor Ramsey.
Yeah, in 2 minds really. Access issues are a concern, and I do agree about sort of like too many compromises, and a sort of lack of parking is a concern. I do like that the developer has listened and it's sort of family homes, not flats, for this site. And I don't know if there are enough material planning reasons maybe to reject, but I'm willing to find something which is better.
Councillor Beth Hassel. Oh, sorry. Councillor Preston.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any fundamental issues about the design of the scheme. I think it does meet housing targets, contribution to housing targets. Could make an argument about it could be used. It could be a more denser scheme this site, but we are here to judge what we are, what's in front of us, and that's we have to accept that. In terms of the access issues, which I think are the ones that people are focused on, because I think whatever's happened about the trees, it does not fall to the current developer. They are, that was the previous landowner. I don't really have any concerns with the trees. The issue of the access, it is a development on the side of a hill. It's very hard to get away from the fact that you can have step down. We've got professional officer advice about making it a car-free development, and that professional advice in para 741, second sentence says, proposal for a car-free scheme for 2 houses cannot be considered to solve detrimental highway impacts in terms of increased road congestion or safety issues, so the car-free nature of the scheme is accepted in policy terms and in terms of highway safety. Given that advice, I would find it very hard to believe there's actually any grounds for refusal on transport and traffic grounds and access grounds. So I'm making that quite clear. That is quite clear advice that we've been given by officers, and we need to take that into account. Just want to make that point.
Thank you, Councillor Ben Hassel.
Thank you. I understand the concerns that were raised with regards to the tree, because I think one thing that we have to make sure is that whatever development we make happen in the area is not adverse to any other private property. So it was good to get that reassurance. It's a bit of a shame that it was highlighted quite early on and we only get it clarified, that close to the meeting. The foundations, the cantilevered foundations, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but my understanding is that it won't impact on the route, so I do feel quite reassured by that. But in terms of construction, I think we'd only have the full reassurance of the tree root protection as part of the construction logistics plan, and we'll have to trust officers on that one. With regards to design, I think modernist or totally out there in terms of designs. Is traditional in its form. There is no established style along Sanderstead Road, and it's in keeping with, or it takes cues from the varied architecture that there is in the direct vicinity of the area. Now, having a disability myself, I'm not keen on these sites usually because there's no step-free access, and I take the point made by Councillor Hale about carrying shopping, etc. This is not necessarily easy. I think it would be good to make sure that there's a lighting scheme there so that if you are coming home, you see where you're stepping on those steps. So making sure there's lights along the entrances in the right places would be helpful. I don't see anything that would stand in terms of any form of appeal. The site is challenging with regards to its topography. Like Councillor Parker originally had some concerns with regards to livable areas being on the lower ground floor. But I checked the portal, and there is a report on daylight and sunlight, and it was quite reassuring to read that. I was quite surprised that there was one for such a small type of application, so it's good that that was provided. And with regards to the safety of the road, I think the fact that it doesn't provide parking in the forecourt it is a benefit for road safety. It is a busy road, it is a challenging road with a very small pavement either side of being there. Believe it or not, we sometimes go down on the area as well. And it is very busy, particularly I think around 3 o'clock to school time. There's loads of groups of kids that are walking along, and it is a very busy road. But I think that is to be addressed more with traffic calming measures that may be needed for that road, as opposed to asking this development to do something about road safety on the road there. Yeah, I think on the whole, even as it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea and it's got its challenges, I think on balance there's very little to object to, as it is policy compliant. Thank you.
Anybody else? So I'll just bring myself in here. Obviously, thank you for the speakers, Mr. Lander and obviously Councillor Hale, one speaker who's put forward obviously issues which are quite important to this committee, particularly around obviously parking. We know Sanderstead Road is quite a very busy road. In terms of step-free access down, that's obviously quite troubling for me as well. So it is, as Councillor Hale said, it's this development is trying to fit into the area, and I suppose in a sense, yes, working with the officers, but there are concerns and issues which obviously have been raised, and we should look at those intensely. So obviously there were any other speakers after this, but I'm not looking to support this application at this moment. I'm very sorry you can't address the committee.
So could I ask, in terms of issues compared to the house that's right next to it on the other side of the path, what is more challenging?
We're addressing the application before us, and that's obviously important.
Chair, just going forward, we're addressing the application. Do you want to challenge any advice that we've had from officers about road safety? Because we have it quite clearly spelled out about us. And I don't want to go forward and when we found grounds for refusal, or something is grounds for refusal, when we've got very clear advice about road safety from officers. So either you challenge that now, or you rule that out as a grounds for refusal going forward.
Well, as we move forward towards towards any substantive vote, obviously those issues will be taken.
That basis,
Councillor Parker.
Those of us on the committee who are unhappy with this application will probably have their own reasons for being unhappy, and I'm happy to express again the reasons why I would like to see this application turned down. I do think it's out of keeping. I don't like the design of it. I don't like the style of it. I do think it's overdevelopment. It's cramped on that very, very difficult site, and my highway concerns remain despite what I've heard from others on the committee, and I'm happy to propose refusal.
Well, Chair, what I was going to do before we brought in Parker, I was going to move approval in line with officer's recommendations, because I think it's a clear report, it's a clear and acceptable development proposal in front of us, and I can certainly see no real grounds to refuse it.
Yes, you may.
Sorry, I feel like we're moving into a debate sort of beyond a resolution, and I wonder if now is the time. Several members have had voiced an opinion around this scheme, and I feel like we're starting to debate either reasons to approve or reasons to refuse without moving to a motion, so I wonder if now's the time to do that. Well, I don't think the way the committee goes is that it goes with the officer recommendation first, and we've only had one movement rather than seconded, so I wonder if that's the right time to do it.
Okay, I think Councillor Parker has a second. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Frey's proposal?
I'm happy to second.
We'll now move on to the substantive motion. Following the officer's recommendation to grant permission, can have a proposal and a seconder, which I've done. Okay, thank you. I will now put this to the vote. Those in favour of the application? 3. And those against? 3. And a casting vote for refusal.
On the grounds of.
Okay, which I mean. So as the vote on the first recommendation, the Grant Planning Commission has fallen, I'd like to ask members if they'd like to propose a new motion on which to vote. Can I have a member to propose a new motion?
I'm happy to propose a new motion. Just to repeat what I said earlier, I probably jumped the gun a little bit, but my concerns, which may be shared by others, that it's out of keeping. I don't like the design or the style of it. I think it's an overdevelopment. I think it's cramped, and my concerns about the highways implications remain.
I do have concerns personally with using the term overdevelopment when it's exceeding space standard.
We are obviously going for a vote at the moment, so
Pardon?
we're going for a vote. Okay.
Well, Chair, I've got, if those are the grounds for refusal, I think we need to clarify a bit. Well, we've had clear officer advice about the snow, it is safety compliant in terms of highways. I cannot see how that can be used as a grounds for refusal.
Well, we've had a new motion of refusal by Councillor Parker, and seconder.
What are the grounds, Chair, so we know what we're voting on?
Yeah,
About clear grounds in front of us as a committee.
So we've had a,
basically, in terms of constitution, we are no longer allowed to have conversations as to the grounds for refusal or developing a motion for refusal.
We are.
That's no longer happening, is it?
well, no, we are having a vote on a new motion. That's so. Obviously, Councillor Parker has. Nicola will come in.
Sorry, Chair, I'm coming in to try and aid the conversation. So obviously the motion to approve has fallen, and yes, we do need now to come up with a second motion needs to be forwarded, which has been put forward by Councillor Parker, and that would need to be seconded. But before we move to a vote, we do it's usual to come to myself to try and make sure we framed that reason for refusal so that there's a clear understanding
what it is that's being proposed. And when Councillor Parker spoke the first time and the second time, there was a slight difference. I'm sorry, not meaning to pick you up, just want to be clear. So you talked about it being out of keeping and having concerns about the design and style and being cramped and highways. You'd also previously talked about concerns regarding level access, and I wasn't sure if that was an intended omission in your second comment or not. So that's my first question. And as you know, I often press members to make sure that we do have as robust as possible refusal reasons. So in terms of, I would just encourage members to talk about particularly what it is about the design and what characteristics of the scheme lead to that overdevelopment, so that we can enlarge on the refusal reasons so far.
And may I ask also to clarify what the Constitution says? Are we allowed to comment on those grounds? Or we're not allowed?
So ultimately, whoever moves and seconds the reason for refusal will have to agree on that motion. If somebody wanted to put forward a view about whether that was a separate motion, so maybe there'd be slightly separate reasons for refusal or slightly different reasons for refusal, that is possible, but you would take whatever motion was completed first would be the one taken first, as my understanding of the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. So, listening to what Nicola's just said, if it would help to add in to the reasons for refusal the fact that it has step-free access and that there are steps down to the development from the pavement, I'm happy for that to be added in. And if it, again, taking officer's advice, if the highways concerns are dealt with, removing that from a reason for refusal, I'm happy to do that. But I would like to retain the cramped nature of the development, and I do believe it's out of keeping in terms of design and style. In fact, the report describes it as having modern or contemporary features. I just think they're not in keeping with the surrounding area.
Councillor Parker, thank you very much. That's very helpful. So you've kind of read my mind. I mean, in terms of the level access, ultimately it's the building regulations that require the level access, and all developments are required to meet what's known as M41 within the building regulations, and it's only that you have to go to that greater level of accessibility if there's a planning condition that requires it, which is the visitable dwellings and those which are suitable for wheelchairs. Now, there is flexibility in the building regs because that takes account of the fact that there are areas where the topography makes that difficult. However, if members are minded that that's something important to them, that is something that you could include in the condition. In terms of the highways, I am going to be a little bit more cautious. I'm going to read to you what the MPPF says. It says development should only be prevented or refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. Now, in this case, the applicant has sought to reduce those impacts on the highways by not having a vehicular access. Also, if they had a vehicular access, it would mean the development need to be pushed back a lot further, potentially having more impacts on adjoining occupiers in the street scene. Bearing in mind our highways officers have not objected to this application, I think it's very difficult for us to demonstrate to appeal a severity case. So I would read that from the recommendation.
So can I push you further from what you've heard? What do you think would be acceptable grounds for the application to be turned down?
I think that's a little bit difficult for me, in terms of appeal. But I think, what I've heard from you and what I've heard from members is that it's regarding the out of keeping, overdevelopment, particularly concerns regarding the modern style and the lack of level access. And I would suggest that's the reason for refusal that I'm hearing from you, Councillor Parker. If a member wishes to second that, we should go to a vote.
Now, some clarification on the level access, because I do think it's that where we have a borough that both the north and south topography is dominated by hills. Are we saying that we're setting precedent because there seems to be no other reason than the fact that we don't like the fact that there are steps down? Otherwise, quite a significant number of new developments that could happen across South North, Upper North, Norbury, or in the south of the borough, someone could come along and say, well, we're not going to develop these areas because we will never have level access.
That's certainly not what mind saying at all. I'm looking at this site. When we look at this site in terms of getting level access to it, and as members will know, who sat at this planning committee, we'll often come to you and talk to you about the ramps that have been achieved at the front of the site and the levels and the platforms and what's required. In terms of this site, in order to get a ramp in order to provide that level access, it would be quite a significant size of ramp, and you would probably require the development to be pushed back further in order, which would then be projected beyond the adjoining occupiers. It would have other implications for the scheme. As officers, we took the opinion that in this case it was acceptable to have the steps and meet M41. Obviously, members are entitled to take a different view if that's important to them. As I say, there is some flex within the building regulations, and officers will do their best to appeal to defend that. But yes, there is flexibility in the building regulations.
But it is the case if we had built 4 flats on the site, two above each other, that the people within that one would have internal stairs, right, to get up to a first floor property. I'm just struggling to see how topography can be a legitimate ground. Steps down to a building can be a legitimate ground. But if that's what Councillor Parker is proposing, that's his right to do that.
Councillor Parker.
As a proposal of the motion to refuse, and in the interest of moving this forward, can I accept the reasons that Nicola just outlined as the reasons for refusal? I'm happy with those as a proposal of the motion. I don't know that the second of the motion will be happy to go to a vote.
I mean, what would be helpful on this
Thank
is
you.
that on this
Okay.
instance you're telling us to
Sure.
follow the officer's advice.
Excuse me.
However, throughout we've heard other
We are going to move
Yeah.
now to
Chair, could I express concerns here that, we increasingly, on a number of occasions, go to a vote on very weak grounds for refusal. It will go through again probably the council vote of the chair. And we're looking here, we're creating jobs
I just
that were hard work that officers
appreciate what you're saying, but we are looking at this application on its merits. We make decisions
on appeal.
on the
Let's
night.
try and get some analysis back on the actual planning appeals that we are sending our way. I don't think we're going to win many of them on the basis of our decision.
Sorry, that's not for this discussion today.
I think having grounds that could be upheld at appeal
Now we've had
is very much in this committee to discuss.
sorry, Councillor Fraser, but we've had a proposal for refusal, and Nicola set out the conditions for refusal. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ramsey. Thank you. We now have a motion to refuse the application. This application shall now put to the vote. Please indicate by raising your hand whether you are for the motion. 3. Against the motion? 2. Any abstentions?